Shoe leather. That's what you call this? The entitled prick's voice ricocheted around the starlight. Chloe's stomach dropped. Mr. Peterson was already slithering over. All eyes pinned her. Another slow Tuesday. But tonight felt different. The usual knot of dread twisted tighter. See, they didn't know about Leo, about the meds she couldn't afford if she lost this job. Another man watched from the corner booth, the quiet one, the one who'd been nursing black coffee for hours. He saw it all, the humiliation, the simmering rage she couldn't unleash. What they didn't see, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was how her carefully concealed compassion would soon flip the script on everything. They have no idea. Shoe leather. That's what you call this? The entitled prick's voice ricocheted around the starlight. Chloe's stomach dropped. Mr. Peterson was already slithering over. All eyes pinned her. Another slow Tuesday. But tonight felt different. The usual knot of dread twisted tighter. See, they didn't know about Leo, about the meds she couldn't afford if she lost this job. Another man watched from the corner booth, the quiet one, the one who'd been nursing black coffee for hours. He saw it all, the humiliation, the simmering rage she couldn't unleash. What they didn't see, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was how her carefully concealed compassion would soon flip the script on everything. They have no idea. The Starlight Diner reeked of stale grease and broken dreams. Rain hammered against the plate glass windows, blurring the neon sign outside into a hazy smear of color. At 24, Chloe Bennett knew every inch of this place, every stain on the faux leather booths, every crack in the linoleum floor. She knew the precise moment the ancient coffee machine would gurgle its last pathetic breath, the exact angle the setting sun would slant through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. She'd traded her dreams, vibrant, sprawling graphic design projects, for the grim reality of mounting medical bills. 16-year-old Leo, her brother, was battling a rare autoimmune disorder that turned his own body against him. The experimental treatments kept him alive, but they bled Chloe dry. The Starlight, with its grueling hours and demeaning customers, was her lifeline, a fragile thread holding them both above water. The diner was a stage for the human comedy, a revolving door of weary travelers, lonely truckers, and the occasional desperate soul seeking solace in a greasy burger and bottomless coffee. Tonight, the drama was particularly thick. Mr. Peterson, her manager, a walking embodiment of simmering resentment, hovered like a vulture, his beady eyes scrutinizing every move. "Bennett, table 6 needs a refill, and wipe down that spill, pronto." Chloe plastered on a smile, a practiced maneuver that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was a waitress, a therapist, a referee, a magician, all rolled into one. She navigated the cramped aisles with a grace born of necessity, refilling mugs, delivering plates, and dodging the occasional wandering hand. In the corner booth, the quiet observer sat. He'd been there for hours, a solitary figure shrouded in shadow. He wasn't like the regulars. His clothes, though simple, a dark gray Henley and jeans, were impeccably tailored, the fabric whispering of quality. He didn't bury himself in a phone or a newspaper. He simply watched, his gaze intense and unwavering. Chloe had stolen glances at him throughout the evening. His eyes, a startling shade of green, seemed to absorb everything, missing nothing. He exuded an unsettling stillness, a sense of contained power that made her uneasy. Around 9, the bell above the door jangled, announcing the arrival of a storm cloud in human form. He was all bluster and ego, radiating money and entitlement. His cheap cologne fought a losing battle against the pervasive odor of fried food. "Hey, sweetheart," he barked, snapping his fingers at Chloe. "Steak, medium rare, and a beer. Make it snappy." He didn't even bother to look at her, his eyes glued to his phone. Chloe gritted her teeth, scribbled down the order, and retreated to the kitchen. 20 minutes later, she presented him with his steak. He attacked it with gusto, sawing off a chunk, chewing once, and then spitting it back onto the plate with a flourish. "What is this garbage?" he roared, his voice cutting through the diner's hum. "I said medium rare. This is shoe leather. Are you deaf or just stupid?" Chloe's breath hitched. Mr. Peterson's head swiveled toward the commotion, his expression a mask of barely concealed fury. Every eye in the starlight was now fixed on her. The old Chloe, the one with dreams and a spine of steel, would have unleashed a torrent of sarcastic wit. But the current Chloe, the one teetering on the edge of financial ruin, swallowed her pride. "I'm so sorry, sir," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'll have the kitchen make you another one right away." "Don't bother," he sneered, shoving the plate away. "I've lost my appetite, and I'm not paying for this slop." "Sir, you've eaten almost a quarter of it," she pointed out, her voice barely a whisper. "Are you arguing with me?" His voice rose to a dangerous pitch. "You want me to tell your manager what a useless waitress you are? I'm not paying. Get me the check for the beer." Mr. Peterson materialized at his side, his face slick with sweat. "Sir, my deepest apologies. The steak is on the house, of course. Anything else we can get you?" He shot Chloe a look that could curdle milk. "I'll be speaking with you later, Bennett." Chloe mumbled an apology and backed away, her cheeks burning with shame. She busied herself wiping down a nearby counter, her movements mechanical, her mind racing. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not now. After the man paid for his beer and stormed out, she began clearing his table, her hands shaking. As she lifted the plate, she noticed something tucked beneath it, a crisp $20 bill. It was more than enough to cover the cost of the steak. She glanced around, but the man was gone. She approached Mr. Peterson, her voice barely audible. "Sir, the man at table 7 left this. It covers the steak." Peterson snatched the bill from her hand, his eyes narrowed. "Good. Means I don't have to dock it from your pay," he grumbled, stuffing it into the register without a word of thanks. Defeated, Chloe went through the motions, her spirits sinking lower with each passing minute. The night dragged on. Finally, the diner began to empty, leaving only the quiet man in the corner booth. She approached his table, coffee pot in hand. "More coffee, sir." He looked up, and for the first time, his gaze focused directly on her. His eyes, so intense, seemed to bore into her soul. "No, thank you. Just the check, please." His voice was a low, resonant rumble, a stark contrast to the obnoxious screech of the steak man. She fetched the check. $2.50. She placed it on the table. He laid down a credit card, a simple black metallic card with no flashy design. The name on it read Con O'Connell. She ran the card, brought back the slip for him to sign. He scribbled a signature, added a tip, and folded the receipt over before placing it back on the tray. "Have a good night," he said, his eyes meeting hers again, an unreadable expression flickering within their depths. "You too, sir," she replied automatically. He stood, revealing a height she hadn't fully registered, maybe 6'2", with a lean, athletic build. He gave a slight nod and disappeared into the rainy night, leaving the starlight bathed in an unnerving silence. Chloe picked up the tray, her mind already calculating. A 20% tip on $2.50 would be 50 cents. Maybe he'd be generous and leave $1. Every penny counted. She flipped over the receipt, and her breath caught in her throat. Her tired eyes had to be deceiving her. The bill was $250. On the tip line he had written, clear as day, $5,000. Below the tip, in the same neat, strong handwriting, was a short message. Character is a currency that isn't accepted everywhere. Where it matters, it's priceless. Your patience tonight was worth more than this. And below that, a phone number. If you believe you're worth more than this diner, call me. We have something to discuss. Chloe sank into the booth, the receipt clutched in her hand, her heart hammering against her ribs. $5,000, more than 2 months' rent, a full cycle of Leo's medication, a lifeline. But it wasn't just the money, it was the note. He had seen her. He had witnessed her humiliation, her restraint, her quiet dignity, and he had placed a value on it that was beyond her comprehension. He noticed everything. The world, which had felt so small and gray moments ago, now felt vast and terrifying and full of impossible light. The Starlight Diner was almost empty. Now to cash out. The system. I need someone to help build it from the ground up. Someone who understands what it's like to be in the cracks. Someone with empathy. I also need someone to create the entire visual identity for the foundation, the logos, the website, the campaign materials. Someone with a talent for graphic design. He looked directly at her. I'm offering you a job, Chloe, Director of Community Outreach and Brand Development for the O'Connell Foundation. The starting salary is $120,000 a year with full benefits. You'll answer directly to me. Your first task will be to use your own story anonymously, of course, to design a program that helps people exactly like you. Chloe stared at him, her mind a maelstrom of confusion, disbelief, and a terrifying soaring hope. From waitress to director in the span of a conversation, it was impossible. It was a dream. Why? She finally whispered, the tears now streaming freely down her cheeks. Why me? You could hire anyone. Can O'Connell gave a small, sad smile. Because the best people to solve a problem are the ones who have lived it. I can hire a 100 red Ivy League graduates with MBAs. They can create spreadsheets and projections. They can't create genuine connection. They don't know what it feels like to choose between medicine and electricity. You do. Your perspective isn't a liability, Chloe. It's your greatest asset. The question is, are you ready to use it? From the corner of her eye, Chloe saw Genevieve Ashford standing in the doorway, her expression a mask of stony disapproval. In that moment, Chloe understood this wasn't just a job offer. It was a test, and she was being thrown into the deep end of a world she didn't understand. A world where some, like the woman in the doorway, would be waiting for her to drown. Accepting Kian Unal's offer was the easiest and most terrifying decision of Chloe's life. The words yes tumbled out of her mouth before she could fully process the seismic shift they would cause. One moment she was drowning, the next she was standing on the shore gasping with no idea how she got there. The first week was a blur of paperwork and bewildering orientations meetings. She was given a spacious, sterile office on the 48th floor, just 2 below Keen's penthouse. Her window offered a view that was only slightly less magnificent than his. She had a state-of-the-art computer with every design program she had ever dreamed of, using a corporate credit card and an assistant, a polite, nervous young man named Peter, who seemed terrified of her. The most profound change, however, was quiet and personal. The first night after her meeting with Keon, she went home and told Leo. She explained as best she could that a wealthy benefactor had noticed her at the diner and offered her a job. And as part of the package, all his medical bills were covered forever. Leo, who had grown so accustomed to the quiet anxiety that permeated their lives, simply stared at her. Then for the first time in years, he broke down and cried, not tears of pain or fear, but of pure, unadulterated relief. Chloe held him, the two of them weeping together on their lumpy sofa. The crushing weight that had defined their existence, finally blessedly gone. That single moment was worth more than any salary or fancy office. But the relief of her personal life stood in stark contrast to the mounting pressure of her professional one. The O'Connell Tower was a world unto itself with its own language, its own customs, and its own unforgiving hierarchy. It was a gilded cage, and Chloe felt like a common sparrow trapped inside with a flock of calculating, predatory hawks. The undisputed matriarch of the flock was Genevieve Ashford. From day one, Genevieve made her disdain for Chloe clear. It wasn't overt aggression, but 1,000 subtle cuts. She would forget to include Chloe in crucial email chains. She would schedule vital meetings and accidentally send the invitation to Chloe's old defunct email address from HR. In group settings, she would introduce Chloe with a slight, almost imperceptible emphasis. And this is Chloe Bennett, who is heading up our new foundation. Khan has a personal interest in this project. The implication was clear and venomous. Chloe was a pet project, a charity case, not a colleague. Chloe tried to ignore it, focusing instead on her work. She threw herself into designing the foundation's visual identity. The ideas that had been dormant for so long came flooding back. She sketched logos, designed website mock-ups, and created branding guides. The work was exhilarating. When she was lost in a color palette or a typography choice, she could almost forget the cold stares and whispered conversations that followed her down the hallway. Her first major assignment was to develop and present a proposal for the foundation's inaugural project. Drawing on her own experience, she designed the Bridge program, a system to provide immediate, no questions asked, financial relief to families who hit a sudden medical or housing crisis, buying them the crucial 30 to 60 days they needed to find a more permanent solution. It was about filling the gap, the terrifying chasm between a paycheck and a catastrophe. She worked tirelessly on the presentation, creating compelling infographics and a detailed, compassionate plan. The presentation was to be made to the company's executive board, a panel of 6 sharp, suited, stern-faced individuals, including Genevieve and Khan. Chloe felt sick with nerves as she stood at the front of the boardroom. The room was intimidating, all dark wood and polished chrome, with a view that could make a person feel dizzy. Khan gave her a small encouraging nod from his seat at the head of the table. Genevieve, seated to his right, looked bored. Chloe began her voice, trembling slightly at first, but gaining strength as she spoke about the people she wanted to help. She talked about the paralyzing fear of an eviction notice, the shame of having a prescription declined at the pharmacy counter. She didn't use her own story, but she poured all of her own emotions into it. When she finished, there was a polite silence, a very passionate presentation. Ms. Bennett, one of the board members, a man named Mr. Davies, commented, his tone non-committal. Then Genevieve spoke, her voice smooth as glass indeed. Passionate. However, I see a few practical and frankly alarming oversights. She picked up the proposal Chloe had distributed. Your projected budget for this bridge program is ambitious to say the least. But more importantly, your vetting process for applicants seems dangerously lax. Minimal paperwork, you say. Emphasis on speed. That sounds like a recipe for fraud. How do we ensure we're not just handing out money to grifters and sob stories? Chloe was prepared for this. The goal is to eliminate the bureaucratic barriers that often prevent the most desperate from getting help. We'd have a small team of caseworkers to do rapid personal follow-ups. The initial grant is small enough to be a low risk for the foundation, but large enough to be life-changing for the recipient. It's about trusting people first. Genevieve gave a small, condescending laugh. Trust, a lovely sentiment, but a disastrous business model. We are a corporation, Ms. Bennett, not a soup kitchen. Every dollar must be accountable. Your proposal lacks metrics for success, key performance indicators, and a scalable framework for fraud prevention. It's emotionally driven, not data-driven. She had reframed Chloe's strength, her empathy as a fatal weakness. The other board members began to murmur in agreement, their faces hardening. Chloe felt her confidence crumble. Genevieve was speaking their language, the cold, hard language of profit and loss, of risk mitigation and scalability. Chloe's compassionate plan suddenly sounded naive and childish. She fumbled for a response, but the corporate jargon Genevieve had deployed was like a wall she couldn't climb. She glanced at Keon, hoping for support, but he remained silent, his expression unreadable, watching her, letting her handle it. It was a test, and she was failing spectacularly. The meeting ended with the board table abling her proposal for further review, a polite term for killing it. Chloe walked back to her office, her face burning with humiliation. She felt like an imposter who had finally been exposed. Genevieve had been right all along. She didn't belong here. The final, most cruel cut came 2 days later. Peter, her assistant, knocked on her door, looking deeply uncomfortable. Miss Bennett, I thought you should see this. He handed her a print out of an internal memo drafted by Genevieve. It was a proposal for the foundation's first major fundraising event, a lavish high society gala. The theme was a gilded evening of giving, and it targeted the city's wealthiest donors. The memo went on to propose an Adopt a Family program where donors could be matched with a vetted, deserving, needy family, complete with a glossy brochure of their story. It was a perversion of everything Chloe had intended. It turned charity into a spectator sport for the rich, turning families' private tragedies into sentimental commodities to be purchased. It was everything she had fought against. And at the bottom of the memo, in the section for Project Lead, was her name. Genevieve had not only rejected her idea, but had twisted it into this grotesque parody and assigned her to execute it. It was a checkmate. If she refused, she would look uncooperative and incapable. If she accepted, she would be forced to betray her own core principles. Chloe stared at the memo, the words blurring through a fresh wave of tears. She had been so wrong. Keen O'Connell hadn't saved her. He had simply moved her from one cage to another, this one just more luxurious and with a far more cunning serpent inside. She picked up her bag, leaving the memo on the desk. She walked past her bewildered assistant, got in the elevator, and rode it down to the ground floor, not knowing if she would ever come back. Chloe didn't go home. The thought of facing Leo's hopeful face was more than she could bear. Instead, she walked. She walked for hours, letting the city's anonymous crowds swallow her up. The towering buildings that had once seemed to promise a new future now felt oppressive, their glass and steel facades reflecting her own failure back at her. She found herself almost unconsciously in her old neighborhood. The familiar sights and sounds, the rumble of the elevated train, the smell of street vendor hot dogs, the chatter of people on their stoops, were a painful reminder of the life she thought she had escaped. It was a hard life, but it was honest. There were no hidden agendas, no corporate sabotage. Cruelty like that of the man in the diner was at least direct. This new world with its smiling assassins and polite poison was infinitely more treacherous. She ended up on a bench in a small, scruffy park, watching children play on a rusty swing set. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was Khan. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. On the fifth call, she finally answered, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. "What? Where are you?" His voice wasn't angry, just calm and direct. "Does it matter? I'm quitting. You can tell Genevieve she won. I'm not cut out for your world." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Stay where you are. I'm coming to find you." Before she could protest, he hung up. A part of her wanted to run to disappear completely, but exhaustion, both physical and emotional, kept her rooted to the bench. 20 minutes later, the same black sedan she had first ridden in pulled up beside the park. Khan got out of the back seat. He wasn't wearing a suit, but jeans and a dark pullover, looking more like the man from the diner than the billionaire CEO. He walked over and sat on the other end of the bench, leaving a respectful distance between them. He didn't speak for a long time, just sat with her, watching the kids play. The silence was more comforting than any platitude would have been. "I know about Genevieve's memo," he finally said, his voice quiet. "I know what she did in the boardroom. I let it happen." Chloe flinched as if struck. "You let it happen? Why was it all just some sick game to see if the charity case could swim with the sharks?" "No," he said, turning to look at her. His face was serious. All traces of corporate polish gone. "It was a test, but not just for you, for the board, for the system I've built. I wanted to see if they could recognize genuine value over polished presentation. They failed, and I needed you to see the battle you were truly signing up for. It's not just about helping people, Chloe. It's about fighting the apathy and cynicism of the very systems that are supposed to help." "I can't fight that," she whispered, shaking her head. "I don't know how. I don't belong in that boardroom. I don't speak that language." "You don't have to," he insisted. "You just have to speak your own." "But you're right. I haven't been entirely honest with you. I asked too much of you without giving you the whole truth." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "The reason I was at that diner, it's true my parents met there, but there's more to it. And the reason I chose you, it wasn't random. It wasn't just your character." In that moment, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. From it, he extracted a folded yellowed piece of newspaper, carefully laminated. He handed it to her. The headline read, "Off-Duty Paramedic, a Hero in Highway Pileup." The date was 16 years ago. The article described a multi-car crash on the I-95. An off-duty paramedic on his way home had been the first on the scene. He had pulled a woman from a burning car just seconds before it was engulfed in flames, saving her life. The article named the hero paramedic. His name was Daniel Bennett. Chloe stared at the name, her father's name. He was a paramedic. He had died when she was 8 months after this article was published. A sudden, massive heart attack in his sleep. Her memories of him were fragmented, blurry images of a kind man with a warm smile who was always tired. "The woman he saved," Khan said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "That was my mother." Chloe looked up from the clipping, her heart stopping. She stared into Kai and Unal's green eyes, and for the first time, she saw not a billionaire, or a CEO, but the boy who almost lost his mother in a fire. He saved her life, Kian continued. My father was in the car behind her, trapped. He saw the whole thing. He said, your father was fearless. After the ambulance took my mom to the hospital, your father just faded back into the crowd. My dad tried to find him to thank him, but he couldn't get his name at the scene. By the time we tracked him down through the paramedic service a few weeks later, we learned he had passed away. We never got to thank him. We never got to repay the debt. He looked away toward the skyline that bore his name. My parents died 2 years later in another crash. I went into the foster system. I never forgot the name, though. Daniel Bennett. For years, I've had my people searching, trying to find his family to see if they needed anything. The search was difficult. You and your mother moved after he died, and your mother remarried and changed her name. It was only recently through a deep dive public record search that we found a match. A Chloe Bennett, daughter of the late Daniel Bennett, living in the same city, whose younger brother had a catastrophic medical diagnosis. He turned back to her, his eyes pleading for understanding. When I saw your name, I had to see for myself. I came to the diner to watch you. I thought I would just anonymously pay off your debts and disappear. But then I saw you. I saw him in you. That same quiet strength, that same instinct to help without seeking reward, that dignity. It wasn't charity, Chloe. It was never charity. It's a debt of honor my family has owed yours for 16 years. The world had shifted beneath Chloe's feet once again. The story of her life, a narrative of struggle and bad luck, was suddenly part of a much larger, more intricate tapestry of fate and connection. Her father, a hazy figure from her childhood, was suddenly a hero, his legacy echoing through time to save his children. Kian's unbelievable offer wasn't the whim of a rich man. It was the closing of a circle, the fulfillment of a promise. She wasn't an imposter. She wasn't a pet project. She was her father's daughter, and the strength he had passed down to her was not a liability, but a legacy. The tears that came this time were not of sadness or humiliation, but of a profound, earth-shattering understanding. The fight with Genevieve, with the board, with the whole cynical world, it was no longer just her fight. It was her father's too, and she would not let him down. Chloe returned to the Okanel Tower the next morning, but she was not the same woman who had fled the day before. The knowledge of her father's legacy had forged a new spine of steel within her. She walked past her office and directly into a high-level planning meeting for the fundraising gala, a meeting she hadn't been invited to. Genevieve Ashford stopped mid-sentence as Chloe entered. I believe you're in the wrong room, she said icily. No, I'm exactly where I need to be, Chloe replied, her voice ringing with newfound authority. She turned to the assembled team. The gilded evening concept is canceled. It's exploitative and misses the entire point of the foundation. We're not selling pity. We're building bridges. Before Genevieve could protest, Chloe laid out her new vision. The event would be called the Bridge Builders Initiative. Instead of a lavish party, it would be an immersive showcase. She described creating powerful installations, each detailing a real solvable problem: a family needing a car repair, a student needing a laptop. Guests wouldn't just donate. They would use tablets to directly fund a specific need in what she called the market of moments. Genevieve was apoplectic, calling the idea grim, uncomfortable, and doomed to fail. You can't ask millionaires to feel bad, she argued to Khan. It's fundraising 101. Khan simply looked at Chloe, saw the fire in her eyes, and overruled Genevieve. Let her work, he commanded. It was a colossal gamble, and Chloe's future rested on the outcome. The night of the event, the atmosphere was tense. Wealthy donors arrived in bespoke suits and couture gowns, looking confused by the raw industrial space and the stark museum-like exhibits. For a moment, Chloe's stomach churned as they milled about awkwardly. Genevieve stood in a corner, a smug "I told you so" look on her face. Then the first domino fell. An elderly woman draped in diamonds stood before an installation about a veteran who couldn't afford a prosthetic limb. After listening to his story, she quietly tapped her tablet. A large screen on the wall, previously dark, lit up. A hero's mobility funded. A gasp went through the room. A tech mogul then funded a year's worth of specialized baby formula for a low-income family. Another screen lit up. Soon it became a cascade. The quiet competition wasn't about ego, but about impact. The room transformed from a party into a mission control center for kindness. The night was capped by a raw, heartfelt speech from a local food bank director whose honest words cut through any remaining pretense. By the end of the evening, they hadn't just met their fundraising goal, they had tripled it. More importantly, real connections were made between the city's elite and its frontline community leaders. The next morning, Genevieve Ashford's resignation was on Can's desk. As Chloe looked out over the city from her office, Keon came to stand beside her. "You didn't just throw a party." "Chloe," he said, his voice filled with a respect she had never heard before. "You showed them how to be architects of change. Your father saved one life with his hands. You honored him tonight by showing hundreds of people how to save lives with their hearts." 2 years later, Chloe Bennett was no longer an imposter in a gilded cage. She was its architect. As executive director, she had grown the Okanell Foundation into a formidable force for good, its Bridge Builders initiative, a celebrated model of effective philanthropy. She moved through the world with a quiet confidence, her past struggles not a source of shame, but the bedrock of her strength. Her brother Leo, now in remission, was in his first year of PMAD. His future a bright horizon. Her partnership with Keon was one of deep mutual respect. The debt between their families long repaid and replaced by a shared mission. One rainy Tuesday driving home, an old instinct led her back to the I-95 corridor and the familiar buzzing sign of the Starlight Diner. The place was timeless, steeped in the same scent of fried onions and stale coffee. She took a booth and watched a young waitress no older than 20 move through the evening rush. In the girl's tired eyes and forced smile, Chloe saw a painful reflection of herself, a ghost from a life that felt a world away. When Chloe paid for her coffee, she left a $500 tip on the small bill. It was enough to be a lifeline, but not so much as to be a fantasy. Beneath the amount, she didn't leave a phone number or a promise of rescue. She simply wrote, "I see how hard you're working. Your strength is worth more than you know. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small." She left without seeing the waitress's reaction. As Chloe drove away, leaving the diner's light behind, she understood the truth of her journey. Can O'Connell hadn't saved her. He had given her a door and the key. It was her own courage that had turned it, her own vision that built the new world on the other side. Her life had been changed forever, not by a billionaire's gift, but by the profound power of being seen and the realization that her true purpose was to hold that door open for others. The story of Chloe Bennett is a powerful reminder that our true worth isn't measured by our job title or our bank account, but by the quiet integrity we show when no one is watching. It's a testament to the idea that a single act of kindness, a moment of recognition, can echo through generations and change the entire course of a life. Chloe wasn't just saved from poverty, she was empowered to become a savior for others, proving that the deepest struggles often forge the strongest leaders. Her journey from a hopeless waitress to a beacon of hope shows us that there are Keon O'Connells in the world, people who see value where others see nothing. But more importantly, it shows us there are countless Chloes filled with untapped potential, waiting for their chance to shine. If this story moved you, please hit that like button to let us know. Share it with someone who might need a reminder that their character matters. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story about the incredible hidden connections that shape our cloud.